What transformed the young cavalry officer who survived capture in South Africa into the leader who defied Hitler against all odds? The answer lies in Churchill's forgotten years, his crossing the floor twice, warnings about Nazi Germany that went unheeded, and the political exile that shaped his ultimate leadership style. Cover his journey from Gallipoli disaster to building alliances, war conferences, and his enduring impact on modern Britain. Winston Churchill was born at Blenheim Palace in 1874 into the aristocratic Spencer Churchill family. This grand estate reflected his privileged lineage, though his parents remained distant figures throughout his childhood. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, pursued a demanding political career, while his American-born mother, Jenny Jerome, was a prominent socialite. Historical accounts suggest the young Churchill experienced considerable emotional neglect, with nannies providing his primary daily care. His early education proved challenging. He struggled with traditional academic subjects, particularly Latin and mathematics, which led to poor performance at his initial schools. At the age of 13, he enrolled at Harrow School. Records indicate he was placed in the Army Form, a track for boys intending military careers, partly due to his perceived academic weaknesses. His time there was marked by independence rather than scholarly distinction. Lord Randolph Churchill's political trajectory was both rapid and tragic. He rose to become Chancellor of the Exchequer but saw his career decline swiftly. He died in 1895 when Winston was just 20 years old. Analysis has shown this early loss profoundly impacted Churchill, with some biographers arguing it fueled his own relentless political ambition. This complex familial and educational foundation shaped the determined character later known as the British Bulldog. Yet despite this profound personal loss, Churchill was already charting a course toward his own destiny through military discipline and global ambition. Winston Churchill's military career began at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. He entered the academy in 1893, graduating 20th in a class of 130. His commission into the 4th Hussars in 1895 launched a period of global adventure. Eager for action, he used family connections to secure postings to conflict zones, beginning with Cuba as an observer. His regiment was soon dispatched to India. Stationed in Bangalore, the young officer found routine duties tedious. He devoted his considerable free time to voracious reading and self-education. The pursuit of glory, however, soon called. In 1897, he attached himself to the Malakand Field Force on the north-west frontier. His dispatches from this campaign formed his first book, The Story of the Malakand Field Force. The following year, he joined the Nile Expeditionary Force in the Sudan. As a cavalry officer with the 21st Lancers, he took part in one of the British Army's last major cavalry charges at the Battle of Omdurman. He chronicled this experience, writing, "I never felt the slightest nervousness," a statement some historians attribute to his immense ambition and sense of destiny. His next destination was the Boer War in South Africa. Arriving in 1899 as a war correspondent for the Morning Post, his train was ambushed just weeks later. Churchill was captured and imprisoned in a Boer prisoner of war camp in Pretoria. His escape was audacious. He scaled a prison wall under cover of darkness and slipped into the surrounding countryside, with a price on his head. He traveled hundreds of miles, hiding in a coal mine before finally reaching safety in Portuguese East Africa. This daring escape made him a national hero in Britain, a reputation he would skillfully parlay into his first seat in the House of Commons the following year. This newfound celebrity status would soon find its formal political expression, as the young hero prepared to take his place on the national stage. Winston Churchill entered Parliament in October 1900 after winning the Conservative seat for Oldham. His early speeches demonstrated a powerful oratory style, quickly marking him as a rising political figure. However, his time with the Conservatives proved short-lived. By 1904, a major dispute over tariff reform, specifically Joseph Chamberlain's proposals for imperial preference, caused a fundamental rift. Churchill strongly supported free trade, a principle he felt the Conservative leadership had abandoned. This conviction led to his dramatic crossing of the floor to join the Liberal Party, a move that stunned the political establishment. As a Liberal, Churchill's political career accelerated. He was appointed Under-Secretary of State for the Colonies in 1905, gaining valuable administrative experience. His parliamentary speeches during this period often focused on social reform, showing a growing interest in issues affecting the working class. His reputation as a skilled debater and a formidable political force continued to grow, solidifying his position within the new party. In September 1908, Churchill married Clementine Hosier in a ceremony at St. Margaret's Church, Westminster. Margaret's Church, Westminster. This partnership provided him with steadfast personal support throughout his demanding public life. His marriage coincided with his appointment as president of the Board of Trade, placing him in the cabinet for the first time and setting the stage for his increasingly influential role in British politics. This cabinet position would soon lead to his first significant government role. Winston Churchill's legacy faces ongoing historical reassessment. His most debated decisions reveal complex dimensions of leadership. The Gallipoli campaign of 1915 remains a defining early controversy. As First Lord of the Admiralty, Churchill championed the naval assault. It aimed to secure a sea route to Russia. The operation resulted in catastrophic Allied casualties. Modern analysis highlights flawed strategic planning, yet some historians note it reflected conventional military thinking of the era. The Bengal famine of 1943 represents another deeply examined episode. Wartime conditions and Japanese occupation of Burma severely disrupted rice supplies. Churchill's war cabinet prioritized resources for the global military effort. Some researchers argue available relief was insufficiently deployed. They cite telegrams showing his focus on wartime logistics. Other scholars emphasize the complex, multifactorial causes of the tragedy. This includes provincial administration failures and local market speculation. Churchill's imperial views and racial attitudes are scrutinized by contemporary scholarship. His writings and speeches frequently expressed a belief in British imperial supremacy. He made statements characterizing certain races as inferior. This perspective influenced his approach to colonial governance. In India, he opposed granting greater self-rule. His government suppressed independence movements. Researchers contrast these views with his steadfast defense of European democracy. A balanced analysis weighs monumental achievements against profound failures. He was instrumental in mobilizing Britain during its darkest hour. His leadership against Nazi Germany remains widely praised. Simultaneously, his actions contributed to immense suffering in the colonies. The historical figure that emerges is neither purely heroic nor wholly villainous. He was a product of his time whose decisions continue to spark rigorous debate. Modern scholarship encourages a nuanced understanding of his complex legacy. Yet even as his legacy was being debated, a final chapter was unfolding that would cast his complex life in yet another unexpected light. Winston Churchill spent his final years largely away from the public eye. His health declined steadily after suffering a series of strokes. By the mid-1960s, he was a frail figure, a stark contrast to the indomitable leader of the war years. He made his last appearance in the House of Commons in 1964. His 90th birthday in November of that year was a quiet, private affair, overshadowed by his physical weakness. He passed away at his London home on January 24, 1965. He was 90 years old. The news prompted an immediate and profound outpouring of grief across the United Kingdom. The government, having prepared for this event for years under the codename Operation Hope Not, swiftly activated the plans for a state funeral. This was an honor not bestowed on a commoner since the death of the Duke of Wellington over a century earlier. The funeral procession through London on January 30th was a spectacle of solemn grandeur. His coffin was borne on a gun carriage, followed by military representatives from over 100 countries. Vast, silent crowds lined the streets, paying their final respects. The service at Stolpol's Cathedral was attended by monarchs, presidents, and prime ministers from across the globe. Queen Elizabeth II broke royal protocol by attending, a mark of deep respect for her first prime minister. The global reaction was immense. World leaders universally praised his legacy. In Washington, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared, "The leadership of Winston Churchill is missed by all who truly love freedom." French President Charles de Gaulle, a sometimes difficult ally, attended the service personally. The Soviet Union sent its highest-ranking delegation to a non-communist state funeral in years. Newspapers worldwide carried banner headlines, with one French editorial noting his death truly felt like the end of an era. His body was then taken to a small churchyard in Bladen, near his family home of Blenheim Palace, for a private burial. But how did this monumental figure's legacy continue to shape the nation he so fiercely defended? Winston Churchill's enduring impact on Britain is deeply embedded in its political culture and national identity. His leadership during the Second World War forged a lasting symbol of resilience, often referred to as the bulldog spirit. This concept continues to influence Britain's self-perception during times of national crisis. In political spheres, his speeches and writings remain essential references, studied for their rhetorical power and strategic insight. Many modern political leaders cite his example when discussing resolve in the face of adversity. His legacy is physically commemorated across the nation. In London, a prominent statue of him stands in Parliament Square, facing the Houses of Parliament. The Churchill Archives Centre at the University of Cambridge preserves his extensive papers for scholarly research. Furthermore, the Cabinet War Rooms, now a museum, offer the public a direct glimpse into his wartime command centre. These sites serve as permanent memorials to his pivotal role in 20th century history. Public opinion consistently affirms his stature. In a major national poll conducted by the BBC in the year 2002, Churchill was voted the greatest Briton, surpassing figures from science, arts, and royalty. Subsequent surveys have repeatedly reinforced this popular view, highlighting his unique place in the national consciousness. His leadership style is a central case study in political science and military academies worldwide. Analysis has shown that his model of decisive leadership is both celebrated for its effectiveness and examined for its potential inflexibility. His legacy, therefore, remains a dynamic and debated subject, ensuring his presence in Britain's ongoing historical narrative. Winston Churchill received his first ministerial appointment in December 1905 as Under Secretary of State for the Colonies. This role placed him in the Liberal government of Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman. Churchill dealt with colonial affairs, particularly focusing on South Africa following the Boer War. His performance here marked his initial step into high administrative office. In April 1908, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith appointed Churchill President of the Board of Trade. This position involved significant social reform. One of his major achievements was the creation of labor exchanges. These were offices designed to help unemployed workers find jobs. The first exchanges opened in 1910, and their establishment is widely seen as a foundational element of the modern welfare system. Churchill became Home Secretary in February 1910. This role placed him in charge of domestic law and order. A dramatic event during his tenure was the Sydney Street siege in January 1911. Police surrounded a building in London's East End where armed anarchists were hiding. Churchill attended the scene himself, a decision that some observers considered an unnecessary risk. The siege ended after a fire engulfed the building. His time as Home Secretary also included controversial prison reforms. Churchill advocated for a more rehabilitative approach to incarceration. He introduced measures to reduce the use of solitary confinement for young offenders. He also worked to categorize prisoners differently, separating habitual criminals from first-time offenders. While many praised these reforms as progressive, others believed they were too lenient on crime. These early ministerial posts solidified his reputation as a dynamic and sometimes divisive political figure. Yet this reputation for leniency would soon be tested by a role demanding immense strength and military resolve. Winston Churchill's appointment as First Lord of the Admiralty in October 1911 placed him at the helm of the world's most powerful navy during a period of escalating international tension. His immediate priority was to maintain naval supremacy against the rapid expansion of the German high seas fleet. Churchill embarked on an aggressive program of naval modernization, a move that some historians argue was essential for national security, while others view it as a provocation that intensified the naval arms race. He championed a revolutionary shift in naval propulsion, overseeing the controversial and costly conversion of the fleet from coal to oil. This strategic gamble secured faster speeds and greater operational range, but it also tied the Royal Navy's fate to the stability of overseas oil supplies from Persia. A key aspect of his vision was the development of naval aviation. He became a powerful advocate for the fledgling Royal Naval Air Service, established in 1914. He recognized the potential of aircraft for reconnaissance and, controversially, for offensive action. He took flying lessons himself to understand the new technology, pushing for the development of seaplanes and the first aircraft carriers. His direct support accelerated the creation of a dedicated naval air arm, a branch that would prove critical in the coming war. Furthermore, Churchill threw his weight behind the development of new, more powerful battleship designs. He was a driving force behind the Queen Elizabeth-class super dreadnoughts, the first British battleships designed to use only oil fuel and armed with 15-inch guns. These vessels represented a massive leap in firepower and became the backbone of the Grand Fleet. His relentless focus on innovation and readiness, though often debated, fundamentally reshaped the Royal Navy into a modern fighting force poised for the industrial-scale conflict of the First World War. This very drive for decisive naval superiority would soon lead him to advocate for a bold, and ultimately ill-fated, strategic gamble. Winston Churchill envisioned the Dardanelles campaign as a masterstroke to break the stalemate of the Western Front. His plan involved forcing the Straits with naval power alone, a concept that later analysis revealed suffered from profound optimism. The initial naval assaults in February and March of 1915 failed to silence the Ottoman fortifications. This forced a drastic revision of the entire operation, leading to the decision for a major amphibious landing on the Gallipoli Peninsula. The landings in April of 1915 immediately descended into chaos. Troops from Australia, New Zealand, Britain, and France faced entrenched Ottoman forces commanded by Mustafa Kemal. Strategic failures were catastrophic. Intelligence on terrain and enemy strength was grossly inadequate. The element of surprise was completely lost, and coordination between services was poor. The campaign devolved into a brutal trench warfare stalemate under the scorching sun, with diseases like dysentery ravaging the ranks. The human cost was staggering, with Allied casualties estimated at over 250,000. The political fallout in London was swift and severe. The mounting casualties and lack of progress created a firestorm of criticism directed squarely at Churchill. As First Lord of the Admiralty, he was the public face of the disaster. Former allies turned against him and his position became untenable. In May of 1915, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith was forced to form a coalition government, and the Conservative contingent demanded Churchill's removal from the Admiralty as a non-negotiable condition. He was demoted to the largely ceremonial post of Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Humiliated and stripped of real influence, Churchill could not remain on the sidelines. He resigned from the government in November of 1915. Seeking redemption through direct service, he traveled to the Western Front. He was appointed Lieutenant Colonel and commanded the 6th Battalion of the Royal Scots Fusiliers, experiencing the grim reality of trench warfare firsthand. This period, as he later wrote, was a profound personal and political wilderness, marking the lowest point of his career. Yet from this political wilderness would emerge one of the most unexpected and consequential decisions of his career. Winston Churchill's political journey took another significant turn in 1924. After nearly 2 decades as a prominent liberal, he crossed the floor to rejoin the Conservative Party. This move came amidst a period of considerable political realignment in Britain. Historians note this was a strategic decision, aligning him with the dominant political force of the era. His return was swiftly rewarded by Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin. Churchill was appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer, one of the most senior roles in government. This placed him in charge of the nation's finances and economic policy. His tenure began with a momentous and ultimately controversial decision. In 1925, Churchill made the fateful choice to return Britain to the gold standard at its pre-war parity. He argued this would restore stability and Britain's financial prestige. However, many economists, including John Maynard Keynes, who wrote The Economic Consequences of Mr. Churchill, vehemently opposed it. Analysis has shown this policy is widely considered to have made British exports more expensive, hurting key industries like coal and contributing to deflationary pressures. This economic decision had direct consequences, helping to trigger the general strike of 1926. The coal miners were particularly affected, leading to widespread industrial action. As Chancellor, Churchill was a central figure in the government's response. He was instrumental in organizing essential supplies and maintaining public order during the 9-day stoppage, a period that tested the nation's resolve. These actions, however, would ultimately contribute to his growing political isolation. The 1930s represented a political wilderness for Winston Churchill. Estranged from the Conservative leadership over Indian policy and other issues, he held no ministerial office for a decade. This period of isolation, however, was far from idle. He immersed himself in writing and historical research, producing major works that secured his finances and intellectual reputation. His monumental 4-volume biography of his ancestor John Churchill, the 1st Duke of Marlborough, consumed much of his energy. This project was not merely an academic exercise. Research has shown he used it to explore themes of military strategy and coalition leadership, lessons he would later apply on a world stage. Concurrently, Churchill became one of the few prominent voices in Britain warning of a gathering storm. He meticulously analyzed German rearmament, citing figures in parliamentary speeches that the government often dismissed as alarmist. He described the Nazi regime as a mortal threat to European peace and civilization itself. Many contemporaries considered his focus on Germany obsessive, while others now see his analysis as prescient. His famous phrase about the gathering storm would later title his history of this period. To maintain political connections and influence outside formal channels, Churchill co-founded a dining society called the Other Club in 1911, which remained a significant forum for him throughout the 30s. It brought together politicians from different parties, military leaders, and other influential figures for private, off-the-record dinners. This institution provided him with a vital network, a platform to test his ideas, and a source of political intelligence during his years in the wilderness, keeping him connected to the heart of British power even from its periphery. Yet even as he cultivated these influential connections, Churchill's focus was shifting toward a danger that few in Britain's establishment were willing to acknowledge. While most British politicians hoped for peace, Winston Churchill saw a gathering storm. From the very moment Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, Churchill's voice rang with alarm in the House of Commons. He meticulously studied German rearmament, delivering a pivotal speech in November 1934. He warned that Germany's air power was rapidly approaching parity with Britain's, a claim the government disputed. His was a lonely cry insisting that the Nazi regime posed a fundamental threat to European liberty. His warnings grew more specific and dire. He criticized the official policy of appeasement, arguing that concessions would only feed Hitler's ambitions. The Munich Agreement of 1938, which ceded parts of Czechoslovakia to Germany, was the apex of this failed policy. Churchill denounced it not as peace, but as a defeat. He famously told the Commons, "You were given the choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor and you will have war." This stark prophecy solidified his position as the chief critic of his own government's strategy. Refusing to remain a solitary voice, Churchill helped establish a discrete political group known as the Focus in 1936. This cross-party alliance brought together influential figures from business, journalism, and politics who shared his concerns. The Focus operated quietly, funding campaigns and coordinating efforts to sway public opinion against the government's appeasement policy. It became a crucial platform, amplifying Churchill's message and building a network of support that would prove vital. While he was officially out of power through the Focus, he was meticulously building the intellectual and political foundation for the resistance he knew was inevitable. Yet even as Churchill built this foundation of resistance, few could have anticipated how swiftly events would propel him back into the heart of power. On September 3, 1939, following Britain's declaration of war on Germany, Winston Churchill was appointed First Lord of the Admiralty. This marked his return to the same post he had held during the First World War, a move signaling the nation's shift to a more assertive war footing. The Board of Admiralty immediately signaled the fleet with the simple, yet resonant message, "Winston is back." This communication was intended to bolster morale and announce a significant change in naval leadership at a critical juncture. Churchill immersed himself in his duties without delay. He initiated a comprehensive review of the Royal Navy's readiness and began a series of visits to naval bases and ships. His objective was to assess capabilities firsthand and accelerate preparations for the burgeoning conflict. Analysis of his early directives reveals a focus on strengthening anti-submarine defenses and addressing vulnerabilities in maritime supply lines. He worked with immense energy, often late into the night, chairing meetings and demanding detailed briefings from his senior admirals. Concurrently, Churchill became a central figure in the new war cabinet. He participated in critical strategic discussions concerning the British Expeditionary Force's deployment to France and the broader economic blockade of Germany. His memorandums from this period, as historians note, displayed a characteristically aggressive stance toward the naval war. While some contemporaries viewed his methods as disruptive, others credited his drive for instilling a vital sense of urgency. His return to the Admiralty placed him at the very heart of British military planning from the war's outset. But could this relentless drive and strategic positioning at the Admiralty soon propel him into an even greater role of national leadership? The political crisis of May 1940 reached its climax as Nazi forces swept across Western Europe. British forces faced catastrophic defeats in Norway, shattering parliamentary confidence in Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. On the 8th of May, a dramatic debate in the House of Commons revealed deep discontent. Chamberlain's majority evaporated, compelling him to resign 3 days later. The nation stood on the brink, demanding a leader for total war. On the 10th of May, Winston Churchill received the summons to become Prime Minister. He later wrote, "I felt as if I were walking with destiny." That same morning, Germany launched its devastating offensive against France and the Low Countries. King George VI formally invited Churchill to form a government. This appointment marked a pivotal turn from the policy of appeasement to one of unwavering resistance. Just 3 days later, Churchill addressed the House of Commons for the first time as Prime Minister. He delivered his historic speech, setting the tone for the conflict ahead. "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat," he declared to Parliament. He outlined a policy of victory at all costs, a message that galvanized a nation preparing for its darkest hour. This rhetoric defined the British spirit for the entire war. Crucially, Churchill immediately formed a coalition government, uniting all major parties. He brought Labour leaders Clement Attlee and Ernest Bevin into his war cabinet. This political unity was essential for national survival. It demonstrated a collective resolve that transcended traditional party divisions. The new government symbolized a nation utterly committed to a single monumental task, achieving final victory against tyranny. But how would this newly unified government translate that collective resolve into concrete strategy when facing its most dire threat? The summer of 1940 presented Britain's gravest peril. With France's surrender in June, Winston Churchill confronted a seemingly hopeless strategic reality. His cabinet debated a negotiated peace with Hitler. Churchill, however, made the monumental decision to fight on alone. He argued that any terms offered would destroy British sovereignty and empire. This resolve defined his darkest hour strategy, a policy of absolute defiance. He channeled this determination into his public speeches, mobilizing the nation's spirit for the struggle ahead. A critical component of his strategy was the immediate mobilization of home defense. Fearing a German invasion was imminent, the government established the local defense volunteers in mid-May. This force, later renamed the Home Guard, swelled to over 1 million volunteers in just 2 months. These civilians, often armed with shotguns and improvised weapons, prepared to resist an airborne assault. Their creation was a powerful symbol of a nation arming itself for total war. It demonstrated that Britain would be defended street by street. Churchill's relationship with his military chiefs and war cabinet was complex and often strained. He pushed for aggressive, sometimes unorthodox actions. His military advisors like General Sir John Dill often counseled caution, prioritizing the preservation of Britain's depleted military strength. Tensions flared over the controversial decision to attack the French fleet at Mers-el-Khair in July. This action, which killed over 1,200 French sailors, was taken to prevent the warships from falling into German hands, while his cabinet supported the move. It highlighted the immense moral weight of his decisions. Research has shown that Churchill's forceful leadership, while creating friction, ultimately forged a unified and relentless war effort, refusing to yield when surrender seemed the easier path. But how would this resolute leadership be tested when Britain itself came under direct assault? During the summer of 1940, Britain faced its gravest peril. Winston Churchill's leadership became the nation's anchor as the Luftwaffe sought to crush the Royal Air Force. He made numerous visits to RAF stations, standing on battered airfields to personally thank exhausted pilots and ground crews. These visits were not mere photo opportunities. They were a calculated strategy to witness the war's reality and to fortify the morale of the few. His presence, often marked by his iconic cigar and determined expression, became a symbol of Britain's defiant resolve. Churchill maintained a complex relationship with Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, the architect of fighter command. While Churchill deeply respected Dowding's strategic brilliance in preserving fighter strength, some historical analysis suggest tensions existed over broader air strategy. Despite this, Churchill fully supported the integrated defense system Dowding created. This network of radar, observer corps, and centralized control was the unsung hero of the battle. It allowed Britain to efficiently direct its outnumbered fighters against the incoming German raids, turning the skies into a lethal trap. The battle's climax was immortalized in Churchill's speech to the House of Commons on the 20th of August, 1940. With Britain still under threat, he delivered his legendary tribute. "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few," he declared. This single sentence perfectly captured the nation's immense debt to its aviators. The speech was not just a summary of a military victory. It was a powerful piece of oratory that defined the battle for the public, transforming an aerial conflict into an epic of national survival and setting the stage for the continued fight. Yet this epic narrative of aerial combat would soon be tested by a very different kind of warfare, one that brought the battle from the skies directly to the homes of ordinary citizens. As the Blitz intensified in the autumn of 1940, Winston Churchill's leadership was tested not in the skies, but on the shattered streets of Britain's cities. He deliberately placed himself amid the devastation, believing his presence was crucial for civilian morale. He visited heavily bombed areas like Coventry and the East End of London within days of the attacks. These were not fleeting photo opportunities. He walked through the rubble, spoke with families who had lost their homes, and was visibly moved by their resilience. His personal interactions, often marked by his trademark B for victory sign, created a powerful bond between the Prime Minister and the public. Churchill's government had to rapidly establish and improve civil defense measures. The existing shelter system was quickly deemed inadequate. His administration oversaw the reinforcement of the London Underground stations, transforming them into vast nightly dormitories for hundreds of thousands. Research has shown that the development of more robust public shelters and the distribution of Anderson shelters to households were critical steps. These actions, while not perfect, demonstrated a state actively working to protect its citizens from the aerial onslaught. Perhaps his most potent weapon was his voice. Churchill's radio broadcasts were masterclasses in bolstering national spirit. He never shied from the grim reality, yet he always framed the struggle as a noble, winnable cause. In a broadcast from 21 October 1940, he directly addressed the bombings, stating the nation would rather see London in ruins than enslaved. His powerful oratory, heard in homes and shelters across the country, translated the war's chaos into a shared, purposeful narrative. He made every citizen feel like a vital participant in the nation's fight for survival, turning fear into a steely determination to endure. But this steely determination forged at home would soon need to be projected outward. As Churchill turned his focus from rallying the nation to securing its future, Winston Churchill recognized that British survival depended on American industrial power. His diplomatic efforts to secure support culminated in the Lend-Lease Act of March 1941. This program allowed the United States to supply vital war materials to Britain. Churchill later described it as the most unsordid act in history. His developing relationship with President Franklin Roosevelt was crucial for this achievement. The two leaders maintained a prolific correspondence for years. Their letters, often signed "Former Naval Person" by Churchill, built a foundation of trust and shared purpose. This partnership was physically cemented in August 1941. They held a secret meeting aboard warships in Placentia Bay, Newfoundland. This was their first face-to-face conference since the war began. Over several days, they discussed grand strategy and drafted a joint declaration. This document, known as the Atlantic Charter, outlined their vision for a post-war world. It affirmed principles like self-determination and freedom from want. The meeting symbolized a powerful, though still informal, Anglo-American alliance. Simultaneously, Churchill worked to maintain the support of the Empire and Commonwealth. He communicated regularly with leaders from Canada, Australia, and other dominions. His speeches consistently framed the conflict as a struggle for the entire British world. This was a delicate balancing act. Some historians argue he prioritized the American alliance. Others believe his primary goal was always the preservation of the British Empire. His efforts ensured that Commonwealth forces remained a formidable component of the Allied war effort, even as the strategic center of gravity shifted across the Atlantic. Yet despite his focus on imperial preservation, Churchill's greatest diplomatic challenge would soon require him to navigate the complex dynamics of Allied cooperation. Winston Churchill played a pivotal role in shaping Allied strategy through his participation in major wartime conferences. At the Tehran Conference in November 1943, he joined Joseph Stalin and Franklin Roosevelt to coordinate the opening of a second front in Western Europe. The subsequent Yalta Conference in February 1945 addressed the post-war reorganization of the continent. These meetings were crucial for maintaining the Grand Alliance, though Churchill often found himself navigating between American and Soviet objectives. Churchill frequently disagreed with the American Germany First strategy. While the United States prioritized a direct cross-channel invasion of northern France, Churchill advocated for a Mediterranean strategy. He believed attacking the soft underbelly of Europe through campaigns in North Africa and Italy would weaken German forces with fewer Allied casualties. This approach also aimed to secure British imperial interests in the region and limit Soviet influence in post-war Europe. Some historians argue this demonstrated his strategic foresight, while others view it as a delay that allowed the Soviet Union to advance further into Eastern Europe. His Mediterranean strategy was realized through the North African campaign. Churchill was deeply involved in planning Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of French North Africa in November 1942. This operation was a compromise, satisfying his peripheral approach while engaging German forces. His relationship with General Dwight Eisenhower, the supreme Allied commander, was generally professional and effective. Churchill respected Eisenhower's organizational skills, though their strategic views sometimes differed. The Prime Minister also maintained working relationships with other commanders like General Bernard Montgomery. Ultimately, his persistent advocacy for his strategic vision significantly influenced the Allied war effort's direction. This strategic influence would soon be tested in one of the war's most ambitious undertakings. Winston Churchill's personal investment in Operation Overlord was profound. He immersed himself in the intricate planning of the Normandy invasion, a project he had championed for years. On the eve of the landings, a restless Churchill visited embarkation ports in southern England. He witnessed the immense armada and spoke with troops from multiple Allied nations. His famous insistence on observing the D-Day landings from a warship was only thwarted by King George VI's direct intervention. The monarch argued the immense risk was unacceptable for the Prime Minister. Churchill's strategic vision, however, clashed with Allied bombing policy. He held deep reservations about the area bombing of German cities, a campaign heavily advocated by Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris. While publicly supporting the effort, private records and his correspondence with President Franklin Roosevelt reveal his profound moral discomfort. He expressed concern over the devastating civilian casualties, viewing the strategy as a necessary but grim aspect of total war. Some historians believe his objections were rooted in both humanitarian and practical concerns about post-war reconstruction. The successful landings on June 6, 1944, marked the beginning of the end. As Allied forces broke out of Normandy, the liberation of Paris in late August became a symbolic triumph. Churchill, though wary of Charles de Gaulle's political maneuvering, recognized its immense psychological importance for the Allied cause. His focus then shifted to the final advance into Germany. He closely monitored the push toward the Rhine, constantly evaluating the political landscape. He was already looking beyond military victory, his mind occupied with the daunting challenges of shaping the post-war world and confronting the new reality of Soviet power in Eastern Europe. As these strategic considerations took shape, Churchill's attention turned increasingly toward the final phase of the European campaign. As the European conflict entered its final months, Winston Churchill intensified his visible leadership. He embarked on a series of morale-boosting visits to frontline troops and newly liberated territories. In March 1945, he crossed the Rhine into Germany, a symbolic gesture demonstrating Allied momentum. He also traveled to Paris, where ecstatic crowds greeted him, cementing the Anglo-French alliance. These journeys were not merely ceremonial. Research has shown they provided him with first-hand assessments of the war's concluding phase and the immense challenges of rebuilding a shattered continent. The long-awaited moment arrived in early May. On the 8th, Churchill delivered a historic radio broadcast announcing Germany's unconditional surrender. His voice, familiar and resolute, informed the British people that the war in Europe was over. He tempered the joy with a sobering reminder that the conflict against Japan continued. Later that day, he made a legendary appearance on the balcony of the Ministry of Health in London. Before a massive crowd filling Whitehall, he simply stated, "This is your." The people roared back, "No, it is yours," capturing a profound moment of shared sacrifice and triumph. This balcony scene was a powerful culmination of his wartime leadership. Analysis has revealed that his choice to share the credit was a calculated and effective political act, strengthening his bond with the public. While some historians focus on his strategic decisions in the war's final months, others highlight these public gestures as essential for national healing. The images of a smiling Churchill, cigar in hand, waving to the celebrating masses became the defining visual representation of victory in Europe Day, a testament to a nation's resilience and its prime minister's indelible role in guiding it to that point. But that triumphant moment would soon give way to a political reversal few could have anticipated. In July 1945, just weeks after Nazi Germany's surrender, Britain held its first general election in 10 years. Winston Churchill stood as a national hero expecting victory. Yet the results delivered a stunning political earthquake. The Labour Party, led by Clement Attlee, achieved a landslide win. It secured 393 seats compared to the Conservatives' 213. This outcome shocked the world and redefined British politics. Analysts reveal several factors behind this historic defeat. The Conservative campaign relied heavily on Churchill's wartime prestige. One famous misstep was a broadcast comparing Labour to a Gestapo-like system. This backfired, alienating voters seeking progressive change. Researchers note the party failed to grasp the public's desire for social reform. The electorate prioritized building a new welfare state over rewarding past glory. Labour's manifesto promising full employment and the National Health Service resonated powerfully. Churchill learned of his defeat while at the Potsdam Conference. He was reportedly deeply hurt by the rejection. His personal physician noted he felt it was an insult. Yet his public response was impeccably dignified. He famously told the crowd, "Thank you very much." He then transitioned into the role of leader of the opposition. This period saw him begin his monumental 6-volume history of the war. The bulldog, though down, was far from out of the fight. Yet this political setback would soon give way to one of his most defining moments on the world stage. On March 5, 1946, Winston Churchill delivered one of the most consequential speeches of the 20th century. Speaking at Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri, the former British Prime Minister stood before an audience that included President Harry Truman. He issued a stark warning about the new geopolitical reality emerging in Europe. Churchill declared that an iron curtain had descended across the continent, stretching from Stettin in the Baltic to Trast in the Adriatic. He described the division between the Soviet-controlled East and the free nations of the West, portraying it as a profound threat to global peace and freedom. The international reaction was immediate and deeply polarized. Western publics and leaders were both alarmed and validated by Churchill's powerful framing of the Soviet threat. In Moscow, however, the speech provoked a furious response. Joseph Stalin personally condemned Churchill's words in an interview with Pravda just over a week later. He equated the former prime minister with Hitler, accusing him of promoting a racist theory of English-speaking superiority and calling for war. This exchange of rhetorical fire solidified the ideological battle lines. Analysis has shown that the Iron Curtain speech fundamentally shaped the early Cold War. It provided a powerful and enduring metaphor that crystallized public understanding of the East-West divide. The address is widely seen as a key catalyst for the Truman Doctrine announced the following year, which committed the United States to supporting free peoples resisting subjugation. While some historians argue Churchill was merely articulating a reality already recognized by Western policymakers, others believe his public pronouncement accelerated the formation of opposing blocs and hardened the positions of both superpowers for the decades-long conflict to come. This same rhetorical power that defined his political career would soon be channeled into a new, monumental undertaking. Following his political transition, Winston Churchill channeled his energies into a monumental literary project. Between 1948 and 1953, he authored his 6-volume history, The Second World War. This work was far from a solitary endeavor. At his Chartwell estate, Churchill directed a dedicated research team, often called the Sacred Circle. This group of military experts, historians, and archivists supplied him with a constant stream of documents and memoranda, forming the foundation for his narrative. Churchill's writing process was highly disciplined. He dictated large sections to a team of secretaries, refining his prose through multiple drafts. His aim was not merely to record events, but to shape the historical narrative from his unique perspective as a wartime leader. The memoirs blend official documents with personal recollection, creating a powerful first-hand account. The work's publication was a major literary and historical event. It was praised for its majestic prose and compelling insight, becoming a bestseller across the globe. However, some historians later noted its inherently subjective viewpoint, suggesting it presented a distinctly Churchillian interpretation of the conflict. Despite this, its significance is undeniable. In 1953, the Swedish Academy recognized his mastery of historical and biographical description, awarding Winston Churchill the Nobel Prize in Literature. This accolade cemented the memoir's status as a landmark of 20th century literature, ensuring his voice would resonate for generations. While his literary legacy was being secured, Churchill was already preparing for one final chapter in his political life. In October 1951, Winston Churchill secured a narrow electoral victory for the Conservatives. This triumph marked his return to the Prime Minister's office at 10 Downing Street. At 77 years old, he became the oldest person to hold the position in the 20th century. His appointment of Anthony Eden as Foreign Secretary was a pivotal early decision. This move solidified Eden's status as the clear heir apparent to the Conservative leadership. Churchill's government accepted the fundamental architecture of the welfare state. He did not attempt to dismantle the National Health Service established by the previous Labour government. His domestic policy focused on managing the existing system rather than pursuing radical change. The post-war economic landscape presented severe challenges, including persistent rationing and a large national debt. His administration continued policies aimed at economic stabilization and gradual recovery. On the international stage, Churchill sought to manage the declining British Empire and navigate the complexities of the Cold War. His health, however, became a growing concern throughout his final term. Some historians argue his advanced age limited his active involvement in daily governance. Others point to his strategic oversight on major foreign policy matters. His final premiership, lasting until April 1955, represented the closing chapter of a monumental political career, cementing his legacy as a defining figure of his era. Yet even as his premiership drew to a close, Churchill was already turning his attention to the most pressing international challenge of the day. Winston Churchill's final political chapter was dominated by his urgent drive to ease Cold War hostilities. Even after his return to Downing Street, he pursued direct dialogue with the Soviet Union. His central proposal was for a high-level summit of the great powers, a bold attempt to bridge the East-West divide through personal diplomacy. He believed face-to-face meetings could prevent a catastrophic global conflict. This vision, however, met fierce resistance from allies and adversaries alike. His relationships with American presidents grew increasingly complex. With Harry Truman, Churchill maintained a working partnership, though Truman remained deeply skeptical of negotiating with the Soviets. The dynamic shifted significantly with Dwight Eisenhower's election in 1952. Eisenhower, a former general, favored a strategy of sustained military and economic pressure over summits. Churchill's persistent appeals for a meeting with the new Soviet leadership after Stalin's death were repeatedly rebuffed by the White House, creating a palpable diplomatic strain. Concurrently, Churchill became a vocal proponent of nuclear deterrence. He argued that only through maintaining a formidable atomic arsenal could the West negotiate from a position of strength. His famous phrase, quoted from a speech, was that safety would be the sturdy child of terror. This belief directly influenced his advocacy for robust defense spending, insisting that military power was the essential foundation for any meaningful diplomatic outreach. He saw deterrence and dialogue not as opposites, but as two sides of the same coin in preserving a fragile peace. This unyielding commitment to maintaining constant vigilance would ultimately take its toll on the statesman himself. In June 1953, Winston Churchill suffered a severe stroke while hosting a dinner at 10 Downing Street. The attack left him partially paralyzed on his left side and severely impacted his ability to speak. His inner circle, including his physician Lord Moran and his private secretary Jacques Colville, made the immediate decision to conceal the full severity of his condition from both the public and Parliament. They presented it as exhaustion from his demanding schedule, a necessary fiction to maintain political stability. Churchill embarked on a grueling period of rehabilitation, demonstrating his formidable willpower. Against considerable odds, he made a partial recovery, regaining his speech and enough mobility to cautiously return to his public duties by October. The concealment, however, could not last indefinitely. As the months passed, colleagues and observers noted his diminished energy and occasional lapses. The pressure for him to resign grew steadily from within his own Conservative Party. Younger ministers like Anthony Eden, his long-presumed successor, and influential figures such as Rab Butler believed the nation required a more vigorous leader. They argued that Britain needed a prime minister fully capable of navigating the complex post-war landscape and the escalating Cold War. Churchill, ever the political fighter, resisted these calls for many months, clinging to the power he had wielded for so long. Finally, on April 5, 1955, the 80-year-old statesman tendered his resignation to Queen Elizabeth II. His departure marked the end of an era in British politics. In a remarkable gesture of respect, the Queen offered Churchill a dukedom, which would have made him the Duke of London. He graciously declined the hereditary peerage, a decision historians attribute to his desire for his son Randolph to continue a political career in the House of Commons and his own wish to remain in the political fray as a commoner. His resignation speech was a poignant moment, closing a definitive chapter in the nation's history. While his public life was drawing to a close, Churchill's most enduring partnership had already spanned nearly 5 decades. Winston Churchill married Clementine Hozier in September 1908. Their partnership lasted 57 years. Research has shown their relationship provided crucial emotional support. They had 5 children: Diana Randolph, Sarah Marigold, and Mary. The death of their daughter Marigold at the age of 3 in 1921 was a profound family tragedy. His relationships with political colleagues were often complex. He maintained a long, though sometimes strained, alliance with Franklin Roosevelt. With his personal staff, he was demanding but inspired strong loyalty. His principal private secretary, John Colville, documented their close working relationship in detailed diaries. Churchill referred to his severe depressive episodes as his black dog. These periods of profound melancholy were known to his inner circle. Analysis has revealed he managed this condition through immense work and painting. His working habits were unconventional. He often conducted government business from his bed in the morning and worked late into the night. At his country home, Chartwell, he established a distinct daily routine. He dedicated afternoons to bricklaying and landscaping the estate grounds. Evenings were frequently reserved for dinner conversations with family, friends, and political figures. This environment served as both a private retreat and a center for his political strategizing. Yet these carefully structured days also contained space for pursuits that nourished his spirit in quieter, more personal ways. Beyond the political arena, Winston Churchill cultivated a rich tapestry of personal hobbies. Painting became a profound creative outlet for him, a practice he began in his 40s. He found solace in landscapes, producing hundreds of works. Alongside his brush, he was a prolific writer, authoring numerous books and articles. His literary contributions were so significant they ultimately earned him the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. At his country home, Chartwell, Churchill engaged in more physical pursuits. He developed a passionate hobby for bricklaying. Becoming a member of the Amalgamated Union of Building Trade Workers, he personally built many of the estate's walls and even a cottage for his daughter. These construction projects were a tangible form of creation and relaxation for him. His lifestyle also reflected a taste for life's finer pleasures. Churchill was rarely seen without his signature cigar, and he had a well-documented appreciation for Paul Roger champagne and fine dining. These indulgences were integral to his public persona. Furthermore, he was an active member of several London clubs and societies, including the Other Club, which he co-founded, valuing the intellectual and social camaraderie they provided. These memberships offered him a vital space for discussion and connection outside of government. These very social connections and his cultivated public image would soon coalesce into a powerful and deliberate national symbol. The British Bulldog persona emerged gradually through Winston Churchill's deliberate self-presentation and wartime necessity. His physical appearance was foundational. A stout posture, a persistent cigar, and his distinctive V-sign gesture became instantly recognizable symbols of defiance. His voice, gruff and resolute, delivered speeches that were both simple and monumental. Phrases like, "We shall fight on the beaches," were not merely words but declarations of national character, perfectly aligning with the Bulldog's tenacious image. This imagery was powerfully amplified by official propaganda. The government and media strategically disseminated cartoons and posters depicting Churchill as a determined bulldog, often shown snarling at Axis powers. This visual shorthand transformed the Prime Minister into an embodiment of Britain's fighting spirit. Research has shown that this constant repetition in the public sphere solidified the association in the popular consciousness, making the man and the metaphor inseparable. Crucially, Churchill actively cultivated this public character. He understood the power of symbolism and rarely shied away from performances that reinforced his bulldog reputation. His famous siren suits, worn during the Blitz, projected an image of a leader ready for action at any hour. While some historians argue this was his natural disposition, others believe it was a carefully managed persona. He wrote of the need for theatricality in leadership, suggesting a conscious effort to project an image of unyielding strength, a role he played masterfully until the very end. Yet this masterfully crafted image of strength stands in stark contrast to the deeply controversial decisions that would come to define his legacy. Our journey into the life of Winston Churchill, the British Bulldog, comes to an end. His story spanned aristocratic beginnings, military education, and early adventures, leading to his entry into Parliament and first ministerial posts. We explored his time as First Lord of the Admiralty, the Gallipoli disaster, and his crossing the floor again. The years out of power were marked by his warnings about Hitler, followed by a return to the Admiralty and his becoming Prime Minister. His darkest hour strategy, the Battle of Britain, and the Blitz tested civilian morale. Building the alliance, war conferences, and strategy defined the conflict, culminating in D-Day and liberation and victory in Europe. We also covered his shock election defeat, the Iron Curtain speech, and writing war memoirs. His return to number 10 and Cold War diplomacy was significant. Declining health led to his resignation, but we also examined his family and relationships, hobbies and pastimes, and the enduring British Bulldog image. Controversial decisions were re-examined, leading to his final years and state funeral and his enduring impact on Britain. Subscribe to our channel to not miss new episodes. Until next time.